So first thing is profile. So let us understand what is a profile. A profile contains user permission and access settings that control what users can do within their organization. So this is what we have understood, right? In Contact Manager, group and professional edition organizations, for these three editions, we have talked about 5 editions, right? So for these 3, you can assign standard profiles to your users. So again, in profile, we have the concept of standard and custom. The way we have that for any other thing in Salesforce, for object, fields, everything we have standard and custom, right? So for profile also you have standard and custom thing. Standard profile is something which is by default there in Salesforce, and custom is what you create. Okay, so same concept. But you can't edit. So in Contact Manager, group and professional, you just have the option of standard profiles, the ones which are provided by Salesforce. You cannot create or edit the profiles. Okay. In Enterprise, Unlimited, Performance and Developer Edition orgs, you can use standard profiles or create, edit and delete custom profiles. So that is the thing. Got it? So the point here is that in the first 3 editions, we just have this option of using standard profiles. However, if you have one of these editions, Enterprise, Unlimited or Performance or Developer, you can also create your own profiles or you can customize the standard ones. So that option you have, right? So that's about profile. Now, for to make it even more simpler, a profile is basically collection of permissions. Okay, set of permission or collection of permissions which is assigned to a user. Now, what user can do in Salesforce depends on those permissions only, right? And as I told you, every user has a profile assigned to their name. Let's go and see what exactly this profile thing is. So if you go to setup, manage users, you will see profiles here. Just click on profiles. Setup, manage users, then you see profiles. Once you click on profiles, you will get a long list of profiles. So most of them are standard profiles. Standard profiles means the ones which have been provided by Salesforce, right? So standard profiles have their own set of permissions and all those things. However, if you have a requirement, if you think that your requirement cannot be met by these standard profiles, you always have the scope to create a custom profile. So you can always go ahead and create a custom profile. Fine. So you can always click on new profile. So, but this new profile creating option is available only on a few editions. That is what we just talked about, right? So that's about our profile thing. Are we clear on this? That standard profile, custom profile. Now you would see that all the users have a profile assigned to them. If you click on this users list, you will see that every user has a profile. So one of the profiles which are there needs to be assigned to every user. Chatter free, system administrator, marketing user, whatever profile you have, right? So based on this profile, this user will have permissions. Like Jeet Singh is a system administrator because he has the system admin profile. Okay, so this profile holds all the permissions that he can actually do, right? So if you remember, yesterday we were talking about that objects, apps, tabs, what all objects, what all tabs, what all apps a user can see, that all depends on his profile, right? So if you want to restrict certain apps from this user, what you have to do, you have to go to his profile and then remove those permissions, right? Let's say you want to restrict the sales application from this user. Then what do you have to do? You have to go to his profile. Either you can click directly here, or you can go to the list of profiles and find this name. Okay. Go to the profile and then click on edit. So see, here we have all the permissions of this profile. What apps, custom app settings, what apps this profile can see, what tabs this profile can see, right? Sales app, if you do not want to allow, you just make it not visible. Got this thing? Tabs, all the tabs are listed here. Accounts, contacts, cases, whatever tabs are there, everything is listed here. So the tabs that you do not want to allow to the user, remove those tabs. Sorry. Remove those tabs, make something, so for tab setting we have default on, default off and tab hidden. 3 options we have. So what is that default on, default off? Let me just explain that. Default on means you can see the tab directly on the application. If some tab is default on your profile, then you will get to see that tab here in the tab panel. If it is default off, you will get to see that tab inside this plus button. You will not see the tab on the panel, but you can see it here. Tab hidden means you will not have access to the tab. Got it? So if you want certain tabs to be available directly on this, and this is about the profile, this is not about the entire organization, this is about a profile. All the users who will have this profile, these permissions will be applicable only to them. Let's say all this is whatever I'm changing, this is applicable to system administrator, okay, not to someone else. So only the people who have system admin profile, it's applicable only for them. So then you have default on, default off, and tab hidden means you will not have access to that tab at all. Okay, so we have that option of making the tab hidden, default on, default off. For applications, you can make it on and off. Either make it visible or not visible. That is the option that you have. So that is one thing. Now there is another permission which is for we have seen apps permission, we do through profile. We have an option of controlling whether the app is visible to the profile or not, right? Tabs permission, this also we do through profile. We have an option of defining whether that tab is visible through the profile or not, by the profile or not. Then there is this object permission. So this object permission is something which cannot be controlled in the standard profiles. So in the standard profile, if you click on edit, this is a standard profile, system administrator, right? If I click on edit, I can edit the app permissions, I can edit the tab permissions. But if you scroll down further, you will see that there is no option for you to edit anything else. So standard profile does not allow you to edit the object permissions. Object permission means which object you can read records, create, edit, delete. Alright. So this standard profiles do not allow you to edit the object permissions. Neither for standard object nor custom object. Nothing is allowed. So this is something which you will have only if you are using a custom profile. A custom profile, how do you get? You can go to the profile, click on new profile, take any of the profiles and clone that. Let's say marketing user profile, you take and clone it and make it customer support team. So you're creating a profile for your customer support team, customer support profile. Click on save. Now on the custom, this is a custom profile, right? So for custom profile, you can edit everything. You just click on edit. Scroll down, see apps, tabs, everything is editable. Standard object permissions. If you don't want delete permission to be there, remove it. Don't want to allow the users to delete records, delete the delete permission, remove the delete permission in fact. Got this thing? So for every profile you can control what all applications that profile will see, what all tabs that profile will see, what objects that profile will have access to, and in the object again what that person can do. That is what we were talking yesterday. So what can the person do with the data? Can he read the data? I mean, can only view the data, create, edit, delete. Alright, so that is about our profile. Now the next thing on the profile is the fields. It's also called a field level security. What is field level security? Field level security is restricting access to the fields. The same thing, field level security. Okay, so this is about restricting access to the fields. How do we restrict access to the field? That is also pretty simple. There is nothing which needs to be done. You just have to go to the profile, but for field level security you don't have to click on edit. You don't need to click on edit. Don't click on edit. Scroll down a little further. You will see field level security option here. So field permissions are stored here. Okay. Let's say you want to restrict the website field. You don't want this profile users to see the website. So website is under which object? Under account. So you go to account, view, click on edit. See, all the fields are visible. You just have to go and say which fields you don't want to be visible. Website, you don't want to be visible, remove it. Now this profile user cannot see website. Okay, so this way, if you don't want the users to see SIC code of the company, make it not visible. So the field will be there, the data will be there, but this profile users will not see that field value. Clear? Simple logic, right? So all these permissions will be controlled through profiles. So that is what our profile is. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Else we will move into the next thing, which is the permission set. So we have seen that in profile we put the permissions, we control everything through the profile, and user gets to do whatever he is allowed through the profile, right? So profile is basically collection of permissions which is assigned to the user, and the user gets permissions through the profile. That we have understood. Now the next thing is permission set. What is the permission set? Permission set is also like profile. That is also collection of permissions. Then what is the difference? The difference is that profile is primary and permission set is secondary. Okay. So profile is something that every user has to have. There cannot be a user without a profile. Okay. But sometimes users need a few additional permissions. For example, all 6 of us or 7 of us, whoever is there in this session, we all are working in the same company, same team. Our company has created, or our administrator, Salesforce administrator has created a single profile for all of us. Fine. Now, in case all of us are having same profile, in case for let's say next 1 week or so, the company plans to put me in one additional project which is outside our profile, right? Let's say for 1 week or 1 month, they want me to work in the HR department. We are all part of sales team when we have a sales profile. But for next 1 month, the company says that you have to take help the HR team also. So to help the HR team, I will need some additional permissions which might not be there in my profile, right? Now, how does the administrator give me those additional permissions? If they give the permissions on the profile, on my profile, then everyone in the profile will get to access that thing, which is something which the company does not want, right? Because I am the only one who will be working on those additional things. They do not want to give the permission to everyone. If they put it on the profile, then what will happen? Everyone who is using that profile will get that permission, which is not right. The other option that can be there is they create a separate profile for me. But if they create a separate profile for me, that also will not be a very good option. Why? Because this phase you might end up having a lot of profiles. For every this small kind of requirement, you cannot just go ahead and add a profile, right? So end of the day, you might have a lot of profiles. You might be dealing with so many profiles. So you cannot do that. So for that reason, what the administrator can do is he can create a permission set. So permission set is like an add-on. Like in your mobile phone, you have a base pack and after that you have add-on packs, right? So permission set is like an add-on. So the administrator can put a few permissions on the permission set as an add-on pack and give it to me. So permission set can be assigned to an individual user. Got it? So it's a set of few permissions which can be put together and given to the user. So permission sets are usually used for any additional requirements that a user has, which which are not available in the profile, and other people in the profile do not need it. So in that kind of situation, we will use a permission set. So permission set is a collection of settings and permissions that give user access to various tools and functions. Okay. Permission sets extend users functional access without changing their profile. So this extends their access without changing the profile. So additional permissions can be given through this. While users can have only one profile. So any user can have only one profile. That is what I showed you. But they can have multiple permission sets. Okay. So permission sets can be multiple. So some permissions you got through, through some permission set you got a few permissions. Through some other permissions that you can get a few other permissions. So that is it, how it is. Alright. So let's see how do we create a permission set and how do we assign it to a user. Permission sets are here under setup, and you have permission sets here. Okay, then you can come and define a new permission set, put a few permissions in this, call it my permission set, whatever, give it a name. So new permission set, and you just have to go and put certain permission. So for example, assign a few apps or object settings. Fine. So put certain permissions on this permission set. Let's say you want to add a few apps in this permission set. So if this permission is for this marketing app and sales app, right? Save it, for example. So these are the two permissions that we have given in this permission set. Save it. Now anyone who needs it, anyone who does not have these apps in the profile, if you assign this permission set to that user will get to see these apps also. Got it? So simple. You just have to go to the users, click on the username, scroll down a little and say edit permission set assignment. So in the user you have this permission set assignment. You can just click on edit assignment. Put it here. That's it. Which permission set you want? You want this one. Click on save. That's it. That is it. That's the permission set thing. Clear? Please let me know if you have any questions here. All right. So that's about our profiles and the permission sets. Now we have understood how to control access to these things like objects and the apps and the fields, everything, right? So controlling that part of access is absolutely fine. Now there is another challenge that any company has, that is with the sharing of the records. If you own certain records, I own certain records, then whether I should see your data or not. If you are working on a case, I am working on my case, whether I should see the cases that you are working on or not. This is something that you will not decide. This is something that the management of the company will decide. You just have to define the settings for this. Once the management, or once you get an instruction that users should not see others' data, okay, or in other words, we are talking about making the data private. So you have to make the data private. If the company says that no, we want everyone to see everyone's data, we are a very good company, very friendly, everyone should see everyone's data, which means we have to make the data public. Got it? So it's just a simple concept. Now for the data, it's just about two things. Either you want the data to be private or you want the data to be public. Private means only the owner of the record will see the record. Public means everyone in the company will see all the records. Got it? So it's just about defining it private or public. It's a very simple concept which you will understand very easily. Just give me 1 minute. I'll just be back. Alright. So this is called sharing settings. So let's understand what is sharing settings. Your organization's sharing model gives users access to records that they do not own, right? So sharing model is basically defined. See, if I own the record, any data which I own, I will get to see it no matter if it is public or private, right? So I will always have access to my data or the data that I own. But the sharing model is all about defining what will happen to the data that the user does not own, whether the user will get to see the data that he does not own. So sharing model basically defines that part. To control access to the data at record level, use sharing settings. Okay, in sharing settings there are two things. One is organization wide default. So sharing setting, we have understood that this is a model which defines whether the people who do not own the data, will they get to see that data or not. So in that first thing that we have is called organization wide default. So OWD, we call it OWD. So this OWD is a simple concept, a default rule for the entire organization, organization wide default, that is what, right? So this is a default rule for the complete organization where you simply specify whether the data of an object will be public or private. That's it, right? So this OWD gives you a baseline level of access for each object and enable you to extend that level of access using hierarchies or sharing rules. Alright. So this is a little complex for you to understand. Don't go into that. Just understand this thing, that this is a default rule for the entire organization. When I say data for account, for example, account. If I say account is private, which will mean only the owner of the account will get to see the account. So there can be 10,000 account records. There is not one account in the system, right? There can be 10,000. So whoever is the owner of that record will get to see that record. Others will not see that record. If I say accounts is public, which will mean no matter who is the owner, everyone will get to see all the records. Correct? So simple logic. Then there is another thing for us, that is the role hierarchy. So role hierarchy is basically a type of hierarchy that we can define in Salesforce. Why is this role hierarchy required? Role hierarchy is required so that sometimes you want to give access to your managers or to the manager of a user. For example, though the data is private, but still the manager should see. Other people at the same level should not see that data. Let's say I'm working on a case and I don't want people who are working at my level to see that, but my manager needs to see which case I am working on. So for that, role hierarchy option is there. And then there is third thing, which is called sharing rules. Okay, what is sharing rules? Sharing rules represents the exceptions to your OWD. So sharing rule is again a rule which is defined to define the exceptions to our OWD. OWD is same for everyone in the organization, right? Private or public. Once said private, it becomes private for everyone. But sometimes you need to define exceptions to that. Once the data has been made private, let's say we all work in the same company, same team. Data is private, which means you all get to see, each one of us gets to see some data, some part of the data. Now the point is that it may happen that your one of us is going on leave for one week or so, right? And the other person needs to look into that person's data. Now the data is private. How will I get to see others' data? Let's say Shobit is going on leave for a week, and the company wants me to take care of his records. How will I take care, or how will I deal with his opportunities? I don't get to see his opportunities, right? So in that case, what will happen? We'll have to define an exception to the actual actual OWD, right? So that is called sharing rules. So these are three things. One is OWD, make the data either private or public. Secondly, give access through role hierarchy, define whether the managers will get to see or not, right? Third is sharing rule, define the exceptions there. Manual sharing is something that we will not talk right now. You will understand it a little later. Okay. So let's go back and talk about OWD. Where do we define this OWD? So just three things in mind, three things that you have to do. What? Number one, by default, data of an object is public or private. Secondly, do the managers get to see the private data? Right. So in private also you have to go and define that, okay, whether the managers will see or it's completely private. Third, any exceptions to that private setting. All right. So where do we do this? Go to setup. So we were just looking into that OWD thing. We just have to see where do we define OWD. So for record sharing, there are three things which I've told you. One, you have to go and define the default rule for the organization. Secondly, you will have to go and define whether the managers will get to see the data or not. And third, you will have you define any other exception. Okay. Where do you do all these things? You just need to go to setup. And from setup you have to go to security controls, and from there you have to click on sharing settings. Alright, so setup, security control, sharing settings. This is what you have to click on. Now once you click on this setup, security control, sharing settings, you go to the sharing settings and then you just Scroll down a little further, you will see organization wide default. So here you will define the default rule for all the objects. Which object you want to make private, public, right? So if I say lead is public, which means everyone gets to see all the leads. If I make it private, only the lead owner will get to see that lead. Okay. So that's the public and private part of it. Then you will see grant access using hierarchies. Grant access using hierarchies. So this is where you will give the access using the hierarchy. So which means if it's public, it's absolutely fine. Public means everyone in the company gets to see it, even the person who does not have any other permission will also get to see it. So public is open to all. Grant access using hierarchy is important only if you are making it private. Then only matters, right? Because it's private, then only my manager depends on this hierarchy to see that, right? So if you have the data public, then there is no concept of this. Then don't worry about this. The data is anyhow open to all. If it is private, then there is the second concept of whether your managers will get to see it. So do you want to give access using hierarchies or not? Okay. So some cases, again, there can be requirement where the managers need to see the data. There can be certain requirements where even the manager should not see the data. For example, let's take an example. We were talking about an employee management application, right? So in that employee management application, if you think about certain objects, let's say the payrolls, and then you think of something like the insurance and the beneficiary details, right? These are the details even your manager does not need to see, right? In that case, this should be turned off, which means private means complete private. Even the manager does not get to see that, right? But there can be certain cases like cases which I am working on, or the opportunities that I am working on. Those are the things where the manager might want to see. So if it is work related thing, my manager will always want to see it. If it is something my personal information which is stored in the company database, the manager also might not need to see that, right? So that is what. So first, make it private or public. Secondly, define whether the manager will get access or not. Grant access using hierarchy. So based on the hierarchy, will the manager have access or not? And then comes the third thing, which is sharing rules. So if you scroll down a little further, you will see sharing rules here. So the sharing rules, as I told you, are used for defining exceptions to the OWD. Alright. So sharing rule will also come into picture only if you have made the data private. Right. Only if the data is private, then only sharing rule is required. If it is public, then everyone is getting to see all the data. Right. If the data is private, then you can define sharing rule and give some access to some of the user for a temporary basis or whatever you need, right? For example, these leads are private. Click on edit, make the leads private. What does it mean? Only the lead owner will get to see the leads. Fine. Now Abdul is going on leave for some time. And this depends on some other object also. That is the reason why it did not get done. But that's fine. So if I make leads private, so and which means we all get to see our own leads. We do not get to see the other person's leads. Now there is this gentleman called Abdul who is managing a few leads. So every day he also receives a few leads and he calls them. He is going on leave for a week. He will not be there. Company wants Avinash to take care of his leads. The company wants Avinash to log in and see the leads and work on those. So what he will need to do? He will sorry, what we will need to do as an administrator, we'll need to go and define a sharing rule. Okay, leads, we have made it private. Now in sharing rule, we just have to go and say new sharing rule for lead. Give it any name. Okay, and then you just have to select which data you want to share, whose data you want to share. For example, you want to share the data of director of direct sales with director of channel sales. We do not have multiple users at this point of time. That is the reason why I'm just taking the role. All right. So this person's data I need to share it with this person. All right. So that part is done. Clear? Then click on save. Okay. Yeah. So when you're sharing, then at that time, what access you want to give? You want to give it a read-only access or a read-write access? Okay. But this is a temporary thing which is being done. Any point of time you can just go and delete this sharing rule. Got this thing? So that is about our sharing rule. So any exceptions that you need to define, if the data is private, then you can define sharing rule and give some additional access to some users. If you just want to make data private, go to organization by default. If you just want the managers to have access to their subordinates data, put it that way. In the grant access using hierarchies, check that box. Alright, so do we understand things now? So now we understand how do we control permissions for applications, objects, tabs, fields, and just now we talked about the records also. Apart from this, you will not have any other requirement of controlling things, because everything we are controlling. Whatever components we have seen in Salesforce so far, everything we have learned how to control the access to them, right? How to control access to records, to the fields, to the applications, to the objects, everything that we can control, we have seen that, right? So now it should be easy for you. So whenever you have to work on this kind of a situation, right, this is one activity where Salesforce administrators spend a lot of time. Sometimes developers also need to get involved into these things, because if you are designing an application and if you do not have the client that you work for, they do not have a dedicated administrator, then the developer will have to do these jobs also. So this is one activity which usually is the major part of an administrator's job. Whenever you are assigned this kind of a work, or whenever you are put a question in the interview or in your certification, you just have to understand what are we talking about, what component are we talking about in terms of restricting the access. Are we talking about object, or are we talking about the field here? Are we talking about the records? If it is record, then it has definitely got to do with OWD and sharing rules. If it is object and any other thing, it has to do with the profile. If it is about providing additional permissions, it has to do with the permission sets. Clear?